looked at him and went, yeah, sure. And then so he rubbed a bit of the sap from the tree on his finger. And I didn't think anything of it. I asked him the next day, how's your finger? He went, oh, gee, it's gone. He said, that's been bugging me for weeks. It's been so painful. And yet just this one thing from this one tree, this one plant, and something that he couldn't get rid of with modern medicine, was fixed overnight.
Welcome to the Miracle Plant Podcast, the show that inspires, promotes, and gives you a daily dose of inspiration from the people who have used cannabis to change their lives in extraordinary ways. Here's your host, Justin Benton.
Welcome back to the Miracle Plant Podcast, where we discuss this miracle plant with so many names and how it's helping people in so many extraordinary ways. Well, today we have a very special guest who's on another healing journey to help us on our mission to reach 1 billion people about the power of this miracle plant by 2025 and, figure out a way to take control of their health, whatever works for you to do that. So with us today, we have Steve Vincent, who is an amazing, accomplished, poet and spiritual teacher and helps people overcome their challenges and live their dharma. So Steve, welcome from down under, as we say up here. How are you? Welcome to the Miracle Plant Podcast.
Hey, Justin. I'm really well. Thank you for having me on, and welcome to all your listeners too. Looking forward to having a chat.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about your journey. Sounds like quite a journey, and I'm sure your healing journey that you've been able to help heal others. So let's hear all about it.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I grew up in a very traditional household, Justin. Traditional Catholic family with the all of the, the baggage that comes with that. The programming from young, work hard at school, get good grades, go to university, get a good job, and everything will be fine. Now, as many people know, that works for a certain time for a certain number of people, but there was and so I did that, and I did very well at university academically, and I became a high school teacher, and that was good for a number of years. I became a faculty head, I became a deputy principal, but there was just something in me that went, is this all there is to life? And it was in those moments that I realised that programming was almost felt like it was from another age, that it didn't serve me, and so I kept looking. There's got to be more to life than just that model. The journey was really deep. I mean, I've been to the Amazon to do ayahuasca. I've done some other plant medicines. And I guess one of the key learnings through all of this, and I'm married with 4 kids. I had a mortgage, when I decided to leave the security of education and working for the government. The biggest learning that I've found, Justin, is that the answers are within us. We often look outside of ourselves for an answer, and goodness knows I have done for many, many, many years. But the answers and the power for each individual is within, and if my understanding of how it all works from my journey is that if we can align to what is within us, to find those things in our life that will help us take the next step, that will help us break out of whatever programming we have. If we can find what's in us, then those next steps on the journey, become a lot easier. But so often, where we look for things outside of ourselves, and my message is really clear. The answer is within us. Often we need help to do that, from other people, from therapists, from words, from books, from courses, from trainings, from podcasts, etc. But the message from me is for everyone listening, the answers lie within, and it's about being still, coming back to yourself, and really finding out what it is that you want in life and what you want from life. Because here's the thing, right? We are creators of our worlds in every second, in every minute, in every day, in every week, in every month, in every quarter, in every year. We create everything in our lives. And so the power is very much within us. And so, that's my 1 minute, 2 minute summary of where I see humanity and how individuals, we can take the steps on the journey and find our own healing.
Love it. Well, some of the things I think of, since this world really changed back in early 2020, what are some of the things that you find most people coming to you for, most, like maybe a common issue? And, the first thing that comes to mind for me is just like stress and anxiety and overwhelm. I'll let you answer the question, and how would you help someone with that?
So, so stress and anxiety, they often come from getting out of the present moment and looking at the past or looking at the future. If we're driven by regrets and those sorts of things, then we're kind of living in the past. If we've got a lot of anxiety, we're fearful about the future. And, like I said, given what's happened in the last couple of years, my goodness, there's been a lot put on individuals in this world about that. One of the key things I think is that, we look for only what we want, so only the positives. For example, if I want to go running, that is really good for me because the positives are it gets my blood flowing, it's good cardiovascular, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there also are some negatives with that. It takes up time. I could get an injury. So what we often do is just focus on the positive one side of things and not understand that everything in this world comes with a negative. And if we focus too much on one of those sides, we're out of balance. And if we're out of balance because we're focusing too much on one side, we're also setting ourselves up for disappointment. If we're going into a new relationship, we want the perfect person, the soulmate. But, the reality is that they're individuals, they're human beings with the same flaws that I have and the same flaws that you have, and yet we only look for one side. And that sets us up for a lot of disappointment. So a lot of talking with people and working with people is understanding that, nature has night and day. Nature has its seasons. Human beings also have a dark and a light side. And yet if we just focus on one thing, then clearly, we are setting ourselves up for disappointment. And disappointment leads to anxiety and all of those sorts of things. So for me, it really is about understanding that, it is a light and a dark conversation. It is a night and a day. It is a positive and a negative. And until we accept that that's how the world is, it is very hard because we only focus on one thing, and that sets us up, as I said, for disappointment.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you've obviously, along your journey, your healing journey, to be able to help others, that you've come across some plant medicine. And I know that in Australia, I think it's technically illegal for me or for you to buy hemp-based product that's non-psychoactive and has all the health benefits of kale and broccoli and other leafy green vegetables. And it's just here we are in the world, and it's now 2023, and at least when we're recording this, and that it's, we live in a world that won't allow access for people who are looking to heal, whether it is spiritually or mentally or physically or emotionally. These plant-based medicine have such a powerful impact, whether it's food and medicine. Food is your medicine, as hemp is. We just juice it here where we make it, just like juicing celery. But what's your take on Australia and coming around the bend for adopting plant-based medicines? I know we have quite the struggle up here in the United States. In fact, the FDA, who's our regulator, they just kicked the can back to our Congress and said they're not going to regulate CBD. And the reason is pretty obvious, because of the $1 trillion industry of big pharma up here. They don't want a plant that someone can grow in their backyard for pennies to compete with their drugs that supposedly are there to help with pain, stress, and sleep. So how's the plant-based medicine, how's the holistic healing down there in Australia compared to the U.S.?
Yeah, what often happens in Australia is that Australia follows the US. So in many ways, it's very similar. Something will happen in the US, and then months or a year later, a similar trend will make its way to Australia. And that's it's part of that Western world and the big influence and all of those sorts of things. So we do face similar challenges. Actually, I'd love to share a quick story with you. When I was in the Amazon doing ayahuasca, we went on this little tour around the property where we were on, and the locals were showing us the different trees. And that's one where the sloth lives, and this is this is another one, and blah blah blah. And they were explaining how all the different plants there were used for different medicines. And one of the guys in the group, he had this really hideous fungal infection in the fingernail of one of his fingers, and it was really, really painful. And the guide said, "Oh, look, we use this one for any infections and things." And he cut the trunk of the plant, and all this red sap oozed out. And the guy said, "Oh, will it help my finger?" And he looked at him and went, "Yeah, sure." And then so he rubbed a bit of the sap from the tree on his finger. And I didn't think anything of it. I asked him the next day, "How's your finger?" And he went, "Oh, gee, it's gone." He said, that's been bugging me for weeks. It's been so painful. And yet just this one thing from this one tree, this one plant, and something that he couldn't get rid of with modern medicine, was fixed overnight. I became excited but also quite sad when I saw that, because, gosh, how much is out there that could genuinely help people that we just are not using, are not even tapping into. I really believe that there is so much we don't know, that there are so many other options other than synthetic pharmaceuticals out there. It was a fascinating thing to see firsthand how this pussy, swollen thing just was almost fixed overnight by a sap from a tree that he just rubbed on. It was fascinating. But to get back to your original question, we have similar challenges here.
Yeah, and it's so there's, if you look up also like Manuka honey, the raw organic Manuka honey is the same thing for pain, and they also can help with like scarring. My grandpa taught me that a long time ago. But yes, and a lot of the pharmaceuticals are just based off of plants, and they try to make a single molecule, and they try to make it a repeatable process, and then they get their patent, and then they make their billions, and then they hurt a bunch of people and get sued, but their insurance money covers the lawsuit, and they make 500 billion, and they only have to pay out 2 or 3 billion, and so at the end of the day they still make money. And that's unfortunately the world that we live in. But I believe there's going to be an awakening. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. That's because in general, if you walk up to the average person on the street and you ask them, what's your opinion of big pharma? I don't think it's a positive one. So, but they certainly have aligned with medical doctors, and the medical doctors are in control of the medical board exams and the questions on the exams and the training. And after they leave, you have to have only one course, if that, in your medical training here in the States about food and nutrition. One course. And some don't even have that. So these people you're learning all about the body, and you're learning about surgery, which can certainly be helpful if you've got a broken arm or you're in a car accident. But then the way that you fix someone who has bad health isn't to look upstream to say, what are you eating? What are you putting in your mouth? It's let's just give you a pill to offset the high cholesterol or the blood sugar or whatever, so there can be a profit based on it. And I know that obviously I'm preaching to the choir, but some people don't think this way. They think, out here in the States, we used to have doctors that would go to the home, and these family doctors would drive to the home, and sometimes horse carriage and whatnot to the home, and they would get to know the family and see what they were eating and know the dog's name and all of that. And then there was a trust between doctors and families. Well, then that all switched, and then people started going to the doctor, and then the hospitals got involved and, making money and for profit. And then now it's how many patients can I see in a day? And, the doctor's always late, and then you're just getting prescribed, that little 7-minute, 10-minute conversation. And the only training they have is to prescribe a pill. in traditional Western medical, and it's just so sad. But, here we are. That's why we're having podcasts. That's why we're having these conversations, and I'm so glad that you had a chance to join us and give us some insights about what you do and what's going on down there in Australia. So before we wrap up, any final points you want to make?
We go very much alternative. We've done energy healing. My daughter's studying to be a naturopath, so working with natural medicines. So we as a family are very much on board with, many of those different things. The only thing I will say is that, like everything, it's a balance. We also, when we, like I said, if there's any surgery or whatever, we still rely on traditional medicine. We don't throw that out the window. But there certainly are better ways. And I guess what I would say is that trust your instincts around that. Your wisdom, your intuition, that is always a huge barometer for things in your life. If it doesn't feel right, then there's a good chance it probably isn't. And yet there's so much bombardment from outside that it can sometimes be a little bit difficult for us to discern that particular part of ourselves. So, trust self, go within, trust self is really, really important. But also understanding that everything has a balance. There are negatives and there are positives to everything. And when we understand that, we can get through life with much more grace and equanimity.
I love it.
I go alternative as much as I can. Yeah.
Love it. We're on the same path, and we help a lot of families, especially with autism, which is how we were able to find this miracle plant, looking for a solution to help heal my son. And, that's what I always tell the parents is trust your instincts. And unfortunately, you get into the doctor's office or the hospital, and there's a lot of pressure for you to do a certain thing, even if you don't like to do it. Like here in the States, if you get a diagnosis of cancer, it's go into surgery now, start chemo radiation now. Your life is at stake. Do it now. And they literally, you could go in and you get your routine checkup. The doctor says, I think we found some cancer or what have you. And then they immediately start to go into procedures within 24 hours. And, you get pressured into it. And unfortunately, because it is a business now, the average cancer diagnosis is worth $500,000 to the medical system.
Wow.
And so that's just an average. And it goes well into the millions for other cases. So it's just really sad. It's a sad state of affairs here in the United States. And if we're the ones that are leading the way for Australia and for other Western countries, we are failing miserably as a country. And unfortunately, because it's not like Big Pharma it's not a company sitting in Houston, Texas. These are multinational conglomerates that are based all over the world, and profit, bottom line, and stock prices and quarterly earnings are what drives their decisions. And not everyone in Big Pharma is bad. Not everyone in medical is bad. In fact, most, I would say, medical doctors joined for the right reasons, and they took the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm. And if they knew the damage that they were doing deep down, and they had the stats, they would stop. And many are going from Western medicine to Eastern medicine and are realizing that something is off because these pills are doing so much damage to people. So, but definitely so excited that you were able to join us. I think we should definitely talk again. You're definitely on the same path as we are. Where can people find you? Where can they go learn more about what you're doing? I think it sounds like such a great thing.
Yeah, sure. I do a lot of work with words. So I'm a poet. I help people go within using the power of words. So if you go to stevevincentonline.com, you can download a free poem and see a little bit about what I do there. So that's stevevincentonline.com. And you'll be able to contact me and reach out to me there. So, and just remember, there is a balance. There is always a balance. And it's interesting, Justin, you mentioned that not every doctor is like that. Right? It's easy to make generalizations, but there are some beautiful, wonderful spiritual people within the medical profession who are trying their hardest to change things. So there is always a balance.
Absolutely. And I always say, first develop your philosophy for yourself, for your loved ones, for your health, and then find a medical professional or a health practitioner or a support system that aligns with your philosophy. You don't have to bend to their philosophy. There are plenty of great doctors out there that you will feel seen, you will feel heard, and they care about you and on figuring out what the problem that led to this and helping coming up with a plan together to get you out of it. And we talk about the 5 pillars of health, which is your food, obviously, your sleep, your water, your exercise, and your mindfulness, which has a lot to do with what you're doing. So happy that our paths connected. I know it wasn't easy because, of technology, but we figured it out, and we're doing it. Glitches, but we persisted, which is another good lesson for everyone listening. So at the end of every Miracle Plant podcast, we say, heal the world on the count to 3, because that is our mission, to reach 1 billion people by the power of this miracle plant and help people take back control of their health. So join me at home. Join me here, Steve. On the count of 3, we'll say heal the world, to lift the energy up, to raise the vibration, for people to find the solution that they're looking for to take control of their health. On the count of 3, let's say heal the world. 1, 2, 3. Heal the world. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on the Miracle Plant podcast. We'll see you next week, and be a blessing, everybody. Happy healing.
Thanks for listening to today's show. To check out more great cannabis podcasts, go to PodConx.com. Here's a preview of one of our other shows.
Hi, y'all. I'm Jo, host of Casually Baked, the podcast. If you're curious to explore the highly responsible side of cannabis, farming, and legalization, I'm here to help lighten the stigma and build your canna confidence. Download episodes now of Casually Baked, the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And journey with me through the evolving cannabis culture and discover how and why people like you are adding cannabis to their wellness toolkit. It's time to get casually baked.